Chapter 842. It seems that this group of people will have a good life in Wan City. I have a feeling that Wan City, which has been peaceful for a long time, will be stirred up because of the arrival of these people. A faint voice sounded from the crowd. When everyone heard this, their faces became heated. The blood that had been hidden in their bodies for a long time started to churn and move. An indescribable aura spread throughout Wan City. This is Wan City? Jingyu raised her head slightly and looked at the surrounding scenery. There were many vendors on the streets, but most of them were selling herbs and weapons. Jingyu, Xiao Chun, and the rest saw this scene along the way. The vendors started to fight because of a disagreement. Fighting and killing could be seen everywhere. It was so frightening. However, the people at the side seemed to be used to it. When they saw the people who were killed, they only glanced at them indifferently and then continued to do their own things. Yes, this is Luan City. Xiao Qin's pitch-black eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty coldness. His pair of cold eyes swept across the faces of people one by one. He reached out and grabbed Jingyu's waist. His entire body was emitting a strong killing aura. It was an invisible warning to everyone, announcing to everyone that Jingyu was his woman. Sure enough, after Xiao Qian made this move, the few malicious gazes in the crowd retracted. Jingyu naturally felt this scene and blinked her eyes in surprise. She did not expect these vicious people to abide by the so-called rules. Did you see it? Xiao Qin pursed his lips and said, "These are the rules of Luan City. If you want to adapt to this place and survive here, you have to follow the rules here." As Xiao Qin spoke, he glanced indifferently at the people in the crowd. The long sword in his hand was suddenly unsheathed. Under the shocked gazes of Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan, the long sword suddenly pierced through the chest of a man. This long sword actually avoided everyone and pierced through the chest of the last man. What a sharp sword technique! How dare you casually peep at my woman? Xiao Qin coldly walked towards the man and arrogantly pulled out the sword from the man's chest. The cold words he spat out caused the surrounding people who didn't know what was going on to widen their eyes. Fuck, so you didn't even allow anyone to look at your wife after bringing her out? Unreasonable. This was too unreasonable. When Jingyu heard Xiao Qin's words, she almost laughed out loud. When she saw Xiao Qin calmly walking back, the corners of Jingyu's mouth curled into a faint smile. She raised her head slightly, crossed her arms, and said, "Husband, you acted too quickly. You should have tortured him properly." "You're right, madam. I'll take note of that next time." When Xiao Qian heard Jingyu's words, he unhurriedly sheathed the long sword in his hand. He once again held Jingyu's waist and calmly continued to walk forward. However, when Jingyu and Xiao Chun walked for a short distance, a man suddenly jumped out and stood in front of Xiao Qian and Jingyu, blocking their path. This action caused Xiao Chun and the rest to frown slightly. "What's the matter?" Xiao Qin coldly asked. "I'm looking for this young lady." When the man heard Xiao Qin's question, his face turned slightly pale. He vaguely glanced at Jingyu before his gaze finally landed on Shangguan Linglan, who was standing beside Jingyu. Chapter 843. Shangguan Linglan furrowed her brows in confusion. She sized up the man in front of her and furrowed her brows tightly. Did she know this person? "Lady, I am the tyrant of Qingshui Street. Since you are new here and don't know the rules of Luan City, why don't you be my woman? I can guarantee your safety." That man puffed out his chest and stared at Shangguan Linglan with a devious gaze. This caused Shangguan Linglan's expression to change drastically. Tisk! Before Shangguan Linglan's anger could rise, a long sword suddenly pierced his chest. That man didn't even have the time to speak before his eyes widened abruptly. His face was filled with disbelief as he slowly raised his head. You. That man extended his trembling hand and pointed at Xing Er, who was holding onto the hilt of the sword. His eyes were wide open, and he looked as though he had died with a grievance. "Are your dog eyes blind? How dare you touch my woman?" Xing Er's face was filled with viciousness as he coldly pulled the long sword out of that man's chest. Bang! After Xing Er finished speaking, that man's eyes widened even more. Jingyu, who was standing by the side, could feel the intense regret that this man emitted at the last moment. The loud sound of him falling to the ground caused a temporary silence to appear on the bustling street. At this moment, everyone looked at Jingyu and Xiao Chun with a different gaze. They had just entered the city for a few minutes, and they had already killed 5 to 6 people. Furthermore, their actions were so ruthless. This technique was obvious to everyone. It seemed that this time around, there was indeed an impressive person who had entered Luan City. Xiao Chun, Jingyu, and the rest looked at the corpse coldly before stepping over it without any change in expression. The surrounding spectators twitched their mouths and looked at Xing Er and Xiao Chun. Regardless of whether it was their attire or their actions, it was clear that Xing Er was just a guard and Xiao Chun was the master. However, why was that lady standing in a row with the mistress of the master? Anyone who saw this would think that the lady was single. Xing Er's actions just now simply made everyone want to cry, but no tears came out. His words and actions were clean and efficient. Indeed, like master, like subordinate, he simply didn't let anyone live. Xing Er, very handsome. Jingyu silently gave Xing Er a thumbs up. Xing Er silently lowered his head, and there was a faint blush on his face. Shangguan Linglan walked for a while before he suddenly realized what Xing Er had just said. Ha ha ha. Jingyu giggled as she pulled Shangguan Linglan's hand and said, Xing Er, what you just said will cause misunderstandings. Our Linglan is still a virgin. Aren't you ruining her reputation by saying that? Xing Er turned to look at Shangguan Linglan and didn't reply. Jingyu. Upon hearing Jingyu's words, Shangguan Linglan's heart suddenly thumped wildly. An unfamiliar emotion seemed to be uncontrollable and suddenly appeared in his heart. Shangguan Linglan hurriedly raised his hand to grab Jingyu's hand. Just now was just a tactic to deal with the enemy. Don't take it seriously. Shangguan Linglan suspiciously blushed. For some reason, at this moment, Shangguan Linglan suddenly didn't dare to look at Xing Er. He bit his lip and tugged at Jingyu as he said, Besides, there are no outsiders here. Don't take it to heart. Chapter 844. How can I not care? Of course I care. Jingyu quickly jumped up and said seriously, Our Xing Er is definitely not an irresponsible person, right? Look at this. If he slept with Linglan, no one would dare to marry her in the future. I'll marry her. Just as Jingyu finished speaking and was about to say something, Xing Er suddenly stopped in his tracks and calmly spat out 2 words. Shangguan Linglan and Jingyu were so shocked that their eyes widened. Jingyu couldn't turn her tongue in time and almost bit it. What did you say? Jingyu stared at Xing Er in shock. Madam, I'm willing to marry her, but she might not be willing to marry me. Second Xing spoke clearly this time, shocking Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan to the point that they were completely dumbfounded. Xiao Qian, on the other hand, revealed an expression that said, This child is worth teaching, as if he was quite satisfied with Second Xing's current performance. Hey, what the hell are you satisfied with? This was a matter of marriage. Jingyu suddenly pulled Shangguan Linglan behind her with a serious look on her face. She looked at Xing Er with a serious expression and said, Xing Er, I'm not joking with you. If you're serious, then please think carefully before saying this. You have to bear a lot of responsibility. Xing Er frowned slightly when he heard this. He lifted his head and looked at Jingyu. He seemed to be carefully analyzing Jingyu's words. As for Linglan, I'll leave it to you. Jingyu silently held her forehead and said, I believe that you're very smart. It'll be fine as long as you know what you're feeling. Shangguan Linglan lowered her head slightly and didn't say anything. Jingyu happily held Xiao Qin's hand and looked at Xiao Chun curiously. She said, After all this, I suddenly remembered how I fell in love with you in the first place. I even married you so easily. Xiao Qin's face darkened slightly when he heard this. You didn't even chase me, Jingyu said indignantly. Then I'll chase you now. You can run. When Xiao Chun heard Jingyu's words, he silently let go of Jingyu's hand and stopped in his tracks. Jingyu's face darkened. She dragged Xiao Chun forward and said unhappily, Run your head. Hurry up and find General Shangguan and Miaoqiu. I don't even know where they've been sent. Let's find a tea house and ask around. Xiao Chun calmly raised his eyebrows as he said this. Then what are we dawdling for? Let's go, let's go. Jingyu dragged Xiao Chun forward. The corner of Xiao Chin's mouth twitched. Was the person dawdling just now really him? Jingyu and the others looked around for the nearest tea house. It seemed that the heavens were deliberately preventing them from finding General Shangguan and Lu Miaoqiu. Jingyu, Xiao Qin, and the others had just walked down a street and were about to turn back. Suddenly, the street became restless. Countless people rushed in from the other side of the street. In the blink of an eye, Jingyu and Xiao Qin's path was blocked. Jingyu frowned slightly. Boss, these are the people who just entered the city. They killed Brother Buckteeth. A small and skinny man stood next to a large and muscular man. The contrast between the two was definitely a visual impact. It was like a bamboo pole standing next to a water tank. This contrast made Jingyu and the others widen their eyes. Oomph! The fat and muscular man snorted coldly. He was holding something that looked like a spiked ball in his hand. Chapter 845. That was the mutated version of the mace? Jingyu's mouth twitched violently as she frowned slightly at the group of people in front of her. Buckteeth took a fancy to this woman? The burly man raised the hammer in his hand and pointed the stick in his hand at Jingyu. He tilted his head and looked at the skinny man beside him, who looked like a bamboo pole. No, no, no. Boss, Buckteeth took a fancy to that one. The skinny man shook his head repeatedly and pointed at Shangguan Linglan. The man turned his head and looked at Shangguan Linglan. He nodded and said, "She's not bad-looking, but it's a pity that she's someone else's wife. Buckteeth is also an idiot. He doesn't understand what's going on." Boss. The skinny man looked like he was about to cry when he heard that. Oomph. The muscular man snorted coldly and raised the hammer in his hand. He looked arrogantly at Jingyu and the group and shouted, "Do you know who I am? Let me tell you, there's no one in Luan City who doesn't know me. Qingshui Street Zhangxiajian. The entire Qingshui Street is mine. You just entered the city, and you dare to kill my subordinates." The man was so agitated that Jingyu was shocked to see that everyone's stomachs were shaking as they spoke. The corner of Jingyu's mouth twitched violently. "He was the one who coveted my woman first." Second interrogation officer calmly took a step forward and looked at the large group of people in front of him with a cold expression as he spoke. The way he said "my woman" was so smooth that Shangguan Linglan, who was at the side, blushed inexplicably when she heard this. "Hee, I'm from Qingshui Street. What's wrong with asking a woman that I took a fancy to? How dare you kill him without distinguishing between right and wrong? Aren't you too arrogant?" The fat man named Zhang Xiaojin frowned and shouted coldly. Xing'er frowned when he heard that, and his expression turned cold. "So what if I killed him?" While Xing'er was silent, Jingyu suddenly stepped forward and stood in front of Xing'er. She looked coldly at Zhang Xiaojin and said, "So what if we are arrogant?" When Zhang Xiaojin saw Jingyu walk out, his eyes lit up and he laughed loudly. "Ha ha ha! What a big tone! What a load of nonsense!" Jingyu crossed her arms and looked at the group of people. She said, "You just want to avenge that man with buckteeth, right? Come at me." "You misunderstood." Zhang Xiaojin laughed heartily and waved his hand. "I'm here this time to make friends with the few of you. I can see that the few of you have extraordinary martial arts, and you're weak in Luan City. Why don't you join Qingshui Street?" "What did you say? Join Qingshui Street?" Jingyu was confused when she heard that. She looked at Zhang Xiaojin strangely and coughed slightly. She said, "All right then, give me a brief introduction of the specialties of Qingshui Street." "Specialties?" Zhang Xiaojin was confused when he heard Jingyu's question. He blinked and looked at the skinny man. He asked, "What specialties?" "What?" The skinny man was also confused when he heard that. He scratched his head and said, The men of Qingshui Street are the bravest." "That's right, the bravest. There are only men in Qingshui Street. No women." "That's right, no women." Everyone opened their mouths to agree, but as soon as they opened their mouths, they realized that something was wrong. Zhang Xiaojin's face immediately darkened, and he lifted his leg to kick the skinny man's butt. The man screamed in pain and rolled away, causing everyone to laugh. Chapter 846. Bastard. What kind of bastard are you saying? Zhang Xiaojin scolded fiercely. "Boss, didn't you ask me to say it?" The man who had been kicked to the ground raised his hand to rub his, but as he looked at Song Xiajian with a resentful look, that gaze made Jingyu widen her eyes abruptly as she looked at the two people in a different light. Cough, cough. Jingyu coughed silently and looked at the two of them with a smile. You guys should keep Qingshui Street for yourselves. We won't disturb the two of you flirting anymore. We'll take our leave first. Jingyu waved her hand and turned to walk around Song Xiajian's group. However, Jingyu pulled Xiao Chun and took a step forward. Suddenly, a mace appeared in front of them and blocked their path, stopping them in their tracks. Guys, isn't it a little unreasonable for you to leave so easily? Song Xiajian sneered at Jingyu's group. Heh. Jingyu was amused. She looked up at Xiao Chun and said, since they're asking for death, why don't we help them? Up to you. Xiao Chun patted Jingyu's head and his dark eyes were filled with love. Jingyu's lips curled up and she straightened her back. She was about to give the order heroically, but just as she opened her mouth, Shangguan Linglan, who was beside Jingyu, rushed out. The sword in his hand flew, and he didn't say a word. He raised his hand and started killing. Since Shangguan Linglan had already rushed out, Xing Er was no exception. His dark figure flashed and appeared beside Shanghai Linglan. It looked like he was killing people, but in reality, his eyes were focused on Shanghai Linglan's safety, and he was protecting Shanghai Linglan. Hey. I haven't said anything yet. Jingyu cursed gloomily. However, the battle had already started. Who would care about Jingyu? This made Jingyu extremely indignant. She raised her hand and pulled out the dagger at her waist. Her petite body shuttled through the crowd like a swimming dragon. To be a qualified assassin, she would stab someone once or twice from time to time. The feeling of being able to stab someone in the back was simply too satisfying. Shangguan Linglan still needed Jingyu's help occasionally. As for Xiao Qian and Xing Er, this was like chopping a watermelon, right? Jingyu's face was filled with black lines as she watched the head roll on the ground like a watermelon. Her mouth twitched violently. All of you, fucking attack. Attack. Song Xiajian didn't expect Jingyu and Xiao Qin's group to start killing people without any explanation. They were still talking in a friendly manner a second ago. Moreover, this killing was completely one-sided. The people who died were all his subordinates. At this moment, Song Xiajian's intestines turned green with regret. He had more than 100 people. When he heard from his subordinates that there were only 2 men with strong martial arts and 2 weak women, he was filled with joy. Wasn't it just 2 men? No matter how strong they were, how could they defeat so many people on Qingshui Street? He wanted to persuade them nicely and recruit them. If they weren't willing, he would use force and beat them half to death. Would he be afraid that they wouldn't listen? It had to be said that Song Xiajian's plan was quite good. However, reality proved that it was useless to just think about it. Who would have thought that these 2 legendary women's martial arts weren't weak at all? Chapter 847. Damn it. Let's go. Song Xiajian was completely enraged. Seeing his subordinates being killed like this, no one could hold back. He looked at Xiao Chun and Jingyu with a cold gaze. Among so many people, Jingyu's martial arts seemed to be the worst. Why? Because Jingyu was simply slacking off. She didn't kill seriously at all. She jumped up and down as if she was having fun. If Song Xiajian had observed carefully, he would have realized how terrifying Jingyu was. She didn't make a move, but once she made a move, there would be no injuries. This was the true portrayal of an assassin. When Jingyu killed people, she didn't use her murderous aura. You couldn't feel her murderous aura. You just watched as Jingyu seemed to be having fun. She was laughing and jumping. The way she killed people seemed to be soft and fluffy. It also seemed as if she had been bumped into by someone and accidentally stabbed the dagger in her hand. In fact, all of this was precisely calculated by Jingyu. If she hadn't calculated, how could she have been so careless? Unfortunately, Song Xiajian didn't think about it carefully. Therefore, he made a decision that he would regret until he died. That was to sneak an attack on Jingyu. As long as he captured Jingyu, they would stop and he would have a bargaining chip. Song Xiajian's eyes lit up as he thought of this. His eyes were full of light as he stared at Jingyu with a burning gaze. Under the cover of the crowd, He approached Jingyu step by step. At this moment, Jingyu was having a lot of fun. In the past, she only killed for the sake of killing. When she didn't kill for the sake of killing, the feeling in her heart became different. That kind of relaxed and lively feeling that seemed to make her happy reverberated in her heart. She was still killing people, but she could no longer feel the murderous aura. It wasn't that the murderous aura didn't exist. It was just that Jingyu had assimilated it into a rather interesting emotion. This feeling was very strange, but it made Jingyu feel very comfortable. Jingyu was experimenting again and again. Why did she have this kind of mentality? She was indeed thinking of killing people, but she didn't have the intention to kill. Jingyu's moving body stopped. She looked in the direction of Xiao Qian and Xing Er and watched their actions. Xiao Qian was indifferent. It was as if he didn't care about any life. He was like a giant standing in the sky, overlooking these ants, and could trample them to death with a lift of his feet. Xing Er was also indifferent. Xing Er was more like a kind of rigid aura. He was like an assassin who knew the art of freezing. Every stab of his sword was bone-chilling. These two kinds of indifference were different. Jingyu looked at Shangguan Linglan again. If Xing Er was ice, then Shangguan Linglan was a raging fire. Every move of his naturally carried a kind of raging wave. It was incomparably mighty as it smashed towards that person. He was like a majestic lion in the midst of raging flames, mighty and passionate. This feeling was really too interesting. Jingyu was so engrossed in observing Xiao Qian and the other two that she didn't notice the figure behind her approaching step by step. That burly figure approached Jingyu with a gloomy expression. Xiao Qian turned around and killed a person. When he turned around, he saw this thrilling scene. He didn't even have to think about it. The long sword in his hand suddenly flew straight toward Jingyu like a gust of wind. The moment Xiao Qian's long sword flew out, Jingyu suddenly turned around. The dagger in her hand was like lightning, ruthlessly stabbing into the man's heart. Xiao Qian's long sword flew past Jingyu's ear and instantly cut open her artery. Chapter 848. Tisk. There were clearly two daggers and two wounds, but because they were so perfectly synchronized, only one sound could be heard. Huh. Zhang Xiajian's eyes widened. The mace he had just raised didn't even have time to fall before he was killed in an instant. The moment Jingyu's dagger pierced through, Xiao Qian's long sword accidentally cut off the hanging gauze beside Jingyu's ear. The woman holding the dagger slowly raised her head. A pair of different colored eyes were exposed in front of Zhang Xiajian. The pair of eyes, one gold and one green, were so beautiful that Zhang Xiajian's eyes widened in disbelief. Ah, I've been discovered. Jingyu's eyelids drooped slightly as she watched the veil slowly float down. Her pair of different colored eyes flickered slightly, and the curled corners of her lips seemed to carry an incomparably seductive expression. Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiajian seemed like he still wanted to say something, but at this moment, he couldn't make a single sound. The vitality in his body was fading away. Jingyu coldly and slowly pulled out the dagger and watched Zhang Xiajian slowly fall backward. That is. As Zhang Xiajian's body fell, Jingyu, who was blocked by the dagger, was completely exposed in front of everyone. The people who were originally waving their weapons all stopped what they were doing at this moment. Everyone stared blankly at Jingyu, the woman in black with different colored eyes. At this moment, everyone held their breaths and stood motionless as they stared at the woman with different colored eyes in disbelief. Huh. Jingyu chuckled softly as the colors in her eyes flickered slightly. Under everyone's horrified gaze, the originally golden and green eyes instantly turned golden. It was a golden color that was as bright as the scorching sun. Different colored eyes. It's different colored eyes. Suddenly, an extremely excited voice rang out, waking everyone up with a start. The eyes that were originally looking at Jingyu with fear were instantly filled with passion. The pair of fiery eyes that were looking at Jingyu were like searchlights, as if they couldn't wait to see through her. Different colored eyes. It's actually a woman with different colored eyes. Could she be the 9th imperial concubine? Countless whispers rang out in the crowd. If that's the case, then isn't that man the 9th emperor's? When the name 9th emperor's rang out, the crowd fell silent once again. Everyone looked at Xiao Chen with eyes filled with fear, as if they were swallowing their saliva in fear. I heard that the only person who was able to walk out of Luan City unscathed from the Black Soil region was the Ninth Emperor's, Xiao Chen, right? Jingyu was just thinking that Xiao Chen's reputation could even be heard in such a chaotic Luan City. In the blink of an eye, she heard these words and instantly frowned. At that time, the Ninth Emperor's was only 13 or 14 years old, right? Another voice said with a hint of fear. It seems that's right. When these two sentences were said, everyone's expression instantly changed. Everyone turned their heads to look at Xiao Chen with a different gaze. They silently swallowed their saliva and once again looked at Jingyu. Jingyu could instantly feel that after these two sentences were said, the fiery gazes that were looking at her seemed to have lessened by a lot. Everyone opened their eyes to look at Jingyu, as if their eyes were filled with conflict. And this conflict was actually because of Xiao Chen? When Jingyu thought of this, she was instantly conflicted. Chapter 849. You are. Xiao Chen strode towards Jingyu and raised his hand to support Jingyu's cheek. He frowned and asked, "Are you hurt anywhere?" "I'm fine." Jingyu raised her head and smiled at Xiao Chen. "Jingyu." Shangguan Linglan also walked over quickly. He glanced at Song Xiajian's corpse on the ground and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that Jingyu was unharmed. He frowned and scolded. "What's wrong with you? How dare you be distracted when you're killing someone?" "Hee, I forgot." Jingyu scratched her head and said, "Don't I still have you guys? I'm not worried." "You only know how to talk nonsense." Shangguan Linglan raised her hand and hit Jingyu, a faint smile appearing in her eyes. Xiao Chen saw that Jingyu was fine and raised his head to pull out the sword that was stuck in the ground. He looked at Song Xiajian's subordinates and asked, "Do you guys still want to fight?" His calm voice was filled with endless pressure as he looked at them coldly. "No, no more." The scary man's legs trembled and his mouth twitched. He waved his hand and said, "No, no more fighting. Their boss was already dead. Who would want to fight?" Furthermore, when they saw Jingyu's strange eyes and thought of Xiao Chen's identity, they immediately extinguished any desire to continue fighting. "Then, can we go now?" Jingyu calmly crossed her arms and asked these people. Of course. Everyone took a step back and opened up a path for them. They watched as Jingyu and Xiao Chen swaggered past them. They felt that it was a pity. They saw the strange eyes, but didn't have the guts to snatch it. The fight just now was clearly seen by everyone. The martial arts of these four people were incomparably good. A small gang like Qingshui Street with hundreds of people couldn't take them down. There were many gangs, but there were only so many people. They were all mortal enemies. Who would form an alliance? That was simply nonsense. Looking at the situation, it seemed that only a few big shots in Luan City had the ability to take down these four people. However, that wasn't a good thing either. One must know that there was more than one tycoon in Luan City. It seemed that Luan City wouldn't be peaceful anymore. Everyone thought of this matter, and their eyes lit up. If they could get a share of the loot while fighting for the other pupil, then that would be amazing. With that thought, these people who had nothing to do and weren't willing to join any factions started to get restless. They were hoping that these big shots would fight until both sides suffered losses, and they would be the oriole behind the mantis stalking the cicada. Jingyu and Xiao Chen walked away peacefully. Jingyu's golden eyes swept across everyone's line of sight. Everyone who was seen by Jingyu trembled in excitement. The swords in their hands seemed to be letting out cries of desire. However, the owner of the sword knew that he couldn't move at all. He raised his hand and pressed down on the sword. A pair of fiery eyes watched Jingyu and Xiao Chen leave. "How fun!" Jingyu's lips curled into a faint smile. She said, "These people can actually resist coming forward to fight. I thought that we were about to start a massacre." Soon, Xiao Chen held Jingyu's hand tightly and looked at Jingyu. He asked, "Are you afraid?" Chapter 850. Scared? Jingyu smiled faintly. She turned to look at Xiao Chen and said, "Xiao Chen, if you see the other me, I wonder if you'll be scared to death?" "Ha ha ha. The other you?" Xiao Chen frowned slightly, and his eyes flickered. "You'll see it very soon." Jingyu turned back and said faintly, "Look, we've arrived at the tea house. Let's go in and ask." Jingyu didn't give Xiaochen a chance to ask as she pulled Xiaochen inside. Before they even reached the tea house, Jingyu heard the words newcomer, murderer, Qingshui Street, Zhang Xiajian, abnormal pupils, 9 emperors, and so on. Jingyu had to admit that the speed at which news spread was really fast. Jingyu, Xiaochen, and the others stepped into the tea house. Everyone turned to look, and the people at the tables closest to the entrance suddenly fell silent. The people beside them also followed their gazes. Just like that, one after another, the entire tea house fell silent. It was so quiet that it was eerie. "Hey, the premium hot tea is here." The extremely busy waiter was carrying a tray of hot tea as he walked out of the backyard with a smile on his face. However, he suddenly realized that the tea house was strangely quiet. Immediately, a smile appeared on his face as he followed everyone's gaze to the door with a strange expression. Almost at the instant he looked over, there was no one in his eyes except for that pair of golden eyes. Clang! The tray in the waiter's hand fell to the ground, shocking everyone in the hall back to their senses. They all gasped and looked at Jingyu with fear in their eyes. It really was abnormal pupils. It was one thing to hear about it, but it was another thing to see it with your own eyes. "Waiter, you dropped your tea." The corners of Jingyu's mouth curled up slightly. She looked at the shocked waiter and said with a smile, Oh." The waiter hurriedly lowered his head to pick up the teapot. Jingyu could clearly see that the waiter's hands were trembling as he picked up the teapot. Jingyu raised her brows slightly. Was she really that scary? Jingyu looked around and saw that everyone was avoiding her gaze. Her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "Everyone here, we'd like to ask some questions. Is anyone willing to give us the honor of answering?" Jingyu said as she looked at Xiaochen. Her face clearly said, "Xiaochen, I have no money." Xiaochen's face darkened when he saw Jingyu's expression. He took off his money pouch expressionlessly, opened it, and poured out the pouch of gold leaves on the table in front of him. The glittering gold leaves were revealed to everyone's eyes just like that. Jingyu's eyes widened, and she turned to look at Xiaochen with a dumbfounded expression. "Fuck, big brother. I asked you to take out the money, not all of it. If anyone can give me the information, all of this will belong to them." Xiaochen said expressionlessly. Chapter 851. These two must be the famous 9th Emperors and 9th Imperial Concubine, right? One of the men with a full beard laughed as he looked at Xiaochen and Jingyu. "If you two have any questions, please ask. For the sake of this golden leaf, we will definitely do our best to answer." Hee. Jingyu smiled and asked, "I heard that a group of people were sent to Luan City a few days ago." When Jingyu said this, she paused for a moment. She narrowed her eyes and looked around, paying attention to everyone's expression. Then, she opened her mouth and said in an incomparably slow manner, "Does anyone here know where the person who was sent here was sent to?" Jingyu's words made everyone in the tea house frown. 7 or 8 days ago. Jingyu narrowed her eyes and added, "They were sent from the Tokyo Imperial City. Does anyone know? Could it be those people?" Finally, after Jingyu finished speaking, a cautious and uncertain voice sounded from the crowd. Jingyu's sharp ears heard it, and her eyes widened. She turned to look at the person who spoke. The one who spoke was a skinny man with delicate features. Among so many dark-skinned burly men, Jingyu was stunned for a moment when she saw such a delicate-looking man. "You know?" Jingyu's eyes lit up as she asked. I. The man probably didn't expect Jingyu to suddenly ask him a question. He was so nervous that he started to tremble. He looked at Jingyu with a pale face and couldn't speak for a long time. "You know? What did you just say? Which group of people? Where are they?" Shangguan Linglan looked at the man excitedly and asked. I. The man became even more frightened after being yelled at by Shangguan Linglan. His frightened appearance and his silence made Jingyu frown. "Speak slowly. If you say something wrong, I won't beat you or kill you." Jingyu's golden eyes flashed slightly. She pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes at the man in front of her. When Jing Yu's words fell, the man's frightened expression finally eased a little. They were sent to the Southeast Prefecture after they were registered. They could leave. The man swallowed and said, if you want to find them, you have to go to the Southeast Prefecture and ask. But I don't think you'll be able to find them. The people of the Southeast Prefecture are very. At this point, the man suddenly stopped talking, as if he had a bone-deep fear of the Southeast Prefecture. His behavior made Jingyu frown slightly. She turned to look at Xiao Chun, a dignified look flashing in her eyes. Here, let's go. Xiao Chun grabbed Jingyu's hand and turned to leave. After walking out of the tea house, Jingyu turned to look at Xiao Chun in confusion and asked, Xiao Chun, you know about the Southeast Prefecture? Yes. Xiao Chun replied coldly. His stiff expression made Jingyu slightly stunned. She seemed to be puzzled. When Xiao Chun heard about the Southeast Prefecture, his entire person seemed to change. The aura around him made people feel extremely oppressed. The sudden change in Xiao Chun made Jingyu frown worriedly. She turned to look at Xing Er and found that Xing Er's face was also gloomy. Jingyu was confused. What was going on? Chapter 852. Could there be something between Xiao Chun and the Southeast Prefecture? By the time they finished their trip, the sky was already dark. Jingyu and Xiao Chun casually found a room to stay in. Jingyu had just finished bathing and came out of the bathroom when she saw that Xiao Chun had already taken off his outer clothes and was lying on the bed with his eyes closed. Jingyu slightly frowned. She touched her wet hair and turned to sit on the windowsill. She raised her hand to pour herself a glass of water and stared blankly outside the window. She frowned slightly and wondered if she should ask Xiao Chun what was going on. Just as Jingyu had this thought, she heard the sound of someone getting up from bed and footsteps behind her. Xiao Chun. Jingyu turned around and saw Xiao Chun slowly walking over. Xiao Chun didn't say anything. He walked to Jingyu's side and pulled Jingyu into his arms. He hugged her tightly and rested his chin on Jingyu's shoulder in silence. Jingyu saw Xiao Chun's action and raised her hand to touch Xiao Chun's cheek. She frowned slightly and asked softly, "What's wrong?" "Let me hug you." Xiao Chun's voice was low and hoarse. He silently hugged Jingyu. Jingyu could clearly feel Xiao Chun's steady breathing and his strong heartbeat. Jingyu didn't ask any more questions and just let Xiao Chun hug her. "Luan City, this is my second time here." While Jingyu and Xiao Chun were silent, Xiao Chun, who was hugging Jingyu tightly, suddenly spoke slowly. "That year, I was 13 years old. I received an imperial edict for the first time to go to the Tokyo border to quell the rebellion." Xiao Chun's voice was indifferent and distant, as if he was telling a distant story. Jingyu's expression tensed up slightly. "Xiao Yi, my elder brother, personally sent me off. He said that he would drink and chat with me when I returned victorious. I didn't know that this wasn't victory, but death." Xiao Chun's hand that was hugging Jingyu suddenly tightened. He slowly said, "My elder brother wanted to kill me." Jingyu's heart suddenly tightened. She silently listened to Xiao Chun's words. "On the battlefield, the trusted aid that my elder brother gave me suddenly betrayed us, causing us to lose the battle. At that time, I wholeheartedly thought that person was a traitor. I didn't want to let my elder brother down, so I risked my life to turn defeat into victory." Xiao Chun spoke slowly and calmly, as if he was narrating an unimportant matter. But only Jingyu could feel that when Xiao Chun spoke, the strength in his grip was very strong. "I thought that was the end, but I didn't expect that he would be so ruthless." Xiao Chun lowered his head and buried it in Jingyu's neck. After taking a deep breath, he slowly said, "Ambush, assassination, escape." Xiao Chun simply spat out these 6 words. 3 words. Jingyu seemed to be able to feel the extreme despair, disbelief, and pain of being betrayed by a loved one in Xiao Chun's heart from these 3 words. "You were." Xiao Chun's voice was somewhat hoarse. He tightly hugged Jingyu and said, "I'm only 13 years old. I didn't believe it was him. I ran." Xiao Chun continued, "I wanted to live. I wanted to live and stand in front of him and ask him why he did all this. In order to live, I ran. I escaped into the Black Soil region and stayed in the Black Soil region for a month. Finally, I passed through the Black Soil region and came to Luan City. That was also the first time I came to Luan City. The first time I learned what it meant by the law of the jungle. Xiao Chun closed his eyes as he spoke. Chapter 853. Luan City's southeast prefecture is the only faction connected to the outside world. Xiao Chun slowly let go of Jingyu and said, "At least half of the people in Luan City have seen the power of the southeast prefecture." "You mean, the southeast prefecture is the one who set the rules?" Jingyu frowned and asked Xiao Chun. "Yes, the people of the southeast prefecture are the ones who set the rules." Jingyu narrowed her eyes slightly. She raised her hand to caress Jingyu's cheek and said faintly, "The Southeast Province is the first group of forces to settle down in Luan City. Their methods are vicious and cruel. The rules were set by them, and the punishment was set by them. Entering the Southeast Prefecture is like walking through the 18 levels of hell. Even if you don't go crazy after coming out, your mind is probably twisted." Xiao Chun's indifferent words made Jingyu frown. "Xiao Chun." Jingyu suddenly looked at Xiao Chun and stared at Xiao Chun with her strange eyes. She pursed her lips and said, "Did you go in?" As soon as Jingyu finished speaking, Jingyu could clearly feel Xiao Chun's body tremble. He tilted his head slightly and fixed his gaze on Jingyu. Their eyes met, and no one said anything. "Are you scared?" Xiao Chun slowly withdrew his hand from Jingyu. The corners of his mouth curled up as he looked at Jingyu. Jingyu also stared at Xiao Chun and calmly looked at Xiao Chun. "What do you think?" "Yes, I went in." Xiao Chun looked at Jingyu and smiled faintly. He said, "When I escaped into Luan City, the first place I entered was the Southeast Prefecture. I stayed there for half a month and came out." "What happened after you came out?" Jingyu was slightly taken aback when she heard Xiao Chun's words. "After I came out, I left." Xiao Chun touched Jingyu's hair and said, "It's easy to enter the Southeast Prefecture but difficult to come out. If General Shangguan and the Crown Princess are really inside, I'm afraid this matter will be troublesome." "You mean, I can't go in and save them?" Jingyu frowned. Xiao Chun didn't say what he experienced in the Southeast Prefecture, but Jingyu could imagine it. It made her heart tremble. "You can't go in." Xiao Chun suddenly grabbed Jingyu's hand. His expression was cold and mocking. He stared at Jingyu and said, "You absolutely can't go in?" "Xiao Chun." Jingyu frowned and wanted to say something, but was suddenly pulled into Xiao Chun's arms. I don't want you to see me in such a sorry state." Xiao Chun's low and hoarse voice echoed in Jingyu's ears. Jingyu's eyes narrowed and suddenly felt a pain in her heart. She felt so sorry for the man in front of her. "Xiao Chun." Jingyu called Xiao Chun like she was sighing. She hugged Xiao Chun's waist and buried her head in his chest. She closed her eyes. "They hurt you, didn't they?" Jingyu's muffled voice came from Xiao Chun's chest. Then Jingyu lifted her head from Xiao Chun's chest and looked up at Xiao Chun. A strange light flashed in her different-colored eyes. "Xiao Chun, they hurt you, didn't they?" Jingyu stared straight at Xiao Chun. The light in her eyes made one's heart tremble. Chapter 854. Southeast Prefecture. Xiao Chun didn't answer Jingyu's question. The corners of Jingyu's mouth curled up as she asked Xiao Chun in a serious tone, "Has anyone ever tried to rebel against the Southeast Prefecture?" Xiao Chun's eyes suddenly widened when he heard this. He seemed to have sensed Jingyu's intentions and looked at Jingyu in surprise. Something incredible seemed to be slowly brewing in his pitch-black eyes. "Are you afraid?" This time, it was Jingyu's turn. Xiao Chun raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Jingyu with a funny expression. "What do you think?" "Ha ha ha." Jingyu opened her arms and suddenly pressed Xiao Chun down on the soft couch. She looked down at Xiao Chun with a pair of bewitching eyes that seemed to be incomparably arrogant as she looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Only I can bully my man. If anyone dares to hurt you, so what if I destroy them?" "Jingyu." Xiao Chun looked at the woman who was looking down at him. A pair of exquisite eyes and a bewitching face. At this moment, 1,000 waves were stirred up in Xiao Chun's heart. Xiao Chun's eyes darkened slightly. He raised his hand and grabbed Jingyu's slender waist and flipped over to press her down. "Yes, this king is waiting for you to bully him." Xiao Chen said as he leaned down and kissed Jing Yu's bright red lips. The temperature in the room rose inch by inch. The two people who were kissing on the soft couch were like 10,000 people. Therefore, this night was calm. However, behind this calm, there were countless hidden murderous intents. There were figures flying in the darkness. There seemed to be some incredible news that caused the peaceful Wan City to boil over. When Jing Yu opened her eyes again, the sky was already bright. Jing Yu lazily raised her hand and looked to the side. Beside her was Xiao Qin's familiar sleeping face. Jing Yu looked at Xiao Qin's handsome face and slightly curved her lips. She raised her hand and caressed Xiao Qin's face. What a good face. Jing Yu's lips curled up slightly as she sighed with a faint smile. Madam, are you captivated by your husband? Xiao Qin's pitch-black eyes slowly opened. His eyes were clear and carried a trace of a smile. When he looked at Jing Yu's eyes, the deep affection in his eyes made Jing Yu's cheeks blush. You're pretending to be asleep again. Jing Yu's face's cheeks unhappily. It was Madam who woke me up. Xiao Chun reached out and wrapped his arms around Jing Yu's waist. He closed his eyes and kissed Jing Yu's forehead before slowly sitting up. Jing Yu and Xiao Chun finished washing up and had just come out of the room when they heard knocking sounds from outside. Xing Er and Shangguan Linglan's voices sounded, and there was a hint of urgency in their voices. What's wrong? Jing Yu walked over and opened the door. She frowned and asked the two of them. Madam, Master. Second interrogation officer bowed slightly in greeting, then walked in and said, When I went out earlier, I discovered something. A few people from a few sects seem to be chasing after us. What? Jing Yu's face turned slightly cold. She frowned and raised her head. Come in and explain. Jing Yu, Xiao Chun, and Xing Er sat down in the room. Xing Er then said, There are 3 sects and 1 prefecture in Wan City. One of the prefectures is the Southeast Prefecture. These 3 sects are the 3 largest sects in Wan City. They are the Sky Peak sect, the Severing Emotions sect, and the Blazing Flames sect. Xing Er pursed his lips slightly and said, These 3 sects are mortal enemies. Originally, these 3 sects have always been active in their own territories and would not easily come out. However, this subordinate discovered this morning that the people from these 3 sects have come out. Chapter 855. You're saying that the people from the 3 sects have all come here? Jing Yu frowned slightly and said, They're here for the different pupils. Imperial concubine, the news of you having different pupils has already spread throughout Wan City. Now that the news has reached the ears of the 3 sects, it's not surprising that they would come here. However, they've come so quickly. Imperial concubine, does Master have a plan to deal with them? After Xing Er's question, Jing Yu and Xiao Chun both fell silent. Xiao Chun propped up his chin and took a sip from the teacup in his hand. He slowly turned his head to look at Jing Yu and asked, Regarding this, do you want to retreat or face it head-on? Absolutely not retreat. Jing Yu said firmly, If we retreat, we'll fall into a bottomless abyss. Have you forgotten what I said when we first entered Wan City? Okay. Xiao Chun slowly put down the teacup in his hand and stared at Jing Yu. Since we're going to face it head-on, we can't retreat. After entering Wan City for so long, what have we seen? Xiao Chun paused slightly and turned his head to look at Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan. After Xiao Chin's question, everyone frowned slightly and began to ponder. Slaughter. Shangguan Linglan pursed his lips and said, There are no laws. What else? Xiao Chun narrowed his eyes and asked again, Freedom. Xing Er frowned slightly and said, There seems to be no restrictions here, no good and evil. What else? Xiao Chen's expression didn't change as he continued to ask. Xing Er and Shangguan Linglan both frowned and thought carefully about what else Luan City was revealing. What did Luan City convey to them in just one day? Forces. Just as Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er were thinking hard, Jing Yu, who had been sitting silently at the side, suddenly spoke. That's right, there's also forces. Xiao Chen's eyes lit up, and he turned to look at Jing Yu. No matter where we come from, anyone we see belongs to a force. The force may be big or small, or it may just be a group. Xiao Chun, You want me to form my own force? Jing Yu's eyes lit up as she turned to look at Xiao Chen. Yes. Xiao Chen sat and looked at Jing Yu and said, it's almost impossible to move a single step in Luan City. Everyone who enters Luan City can't wait to join a force. And the few who don't join are mostly vicious people. Xiao Chen pursed his lips and said, these people make a living by hunting vicious beasts in the Black Earth region. These people are bloodthirsty and some forces won't provoke them. You have to know that most of these people are outlaws. If you provoke them and they bite you back, each of them is enough to break your arm. You have to fight for your life. Jing Yu understood Xiao Chen's meaning very well and nodded slightly. If we can subdue these people, Xiao Chen turned his gaze to Jing Yu and raised his chin slightly. He looked at Jing Yu and said, do you have the confidence to subdue these people? Haha. Jing Yu covered her mouth and smiled. She looked back at Xiao Chen and asked, what about you? Do you have the confidence? The two looked at each other for a long time and then laughed. Chapter 856. Shangguan Linglan and Xing Er looked at each other and furrowed their brows in confusion. They still hadn't recovered from the conversation between the two. Xiao Chen, I'll go with Linglan. You go with Xing Er. Let's see who can recruit more people. Jing Yu stood up and looked at Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen frowned in dissatisfaction when he heard this. Don't worry, I have the flower burial snake with me. Most people won't dare to get close to me. Jing Yu knew what Xiao Chen was thinking when she saw his expression. She smiled and looked at Xiao Chen. As expected, Xiao Chen's furrowed brows relaxed. Xiao Chen turned his head and looked at the flower burial snake that was lying quietly under the table. For the first time, he didn't look at it coldly. It seemed that this little snake could be useful at a critical moment. 3 days. Xiao Chen stood up and looked at Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan. He said, even if the big sects want to make a move, they can't do it immediately. There are restrictions. If we can build a force within 3 days, we will at least have a fighting chance. Okay. Jing Yu's eyes flashed when she heard this, but she nodded in agreement. Xiao Chen looked at the flower burial snake and then at Jing Yu. He took a deep breath and said, be careful. Xiao Chen and Xing Er left first. Jing Yu stood up and smiled. She let out a sigh of relief and said, we finally sent Xiao Chen away. What? Shangguan Linglan stared at Jing Yu and said, aren't you going to recruit people? I'm going. Jing Yu blinked and said, but not now. Yeah. What are you trying to do? Shangguan Linglan looked at Jing Yu with a conflicted expression and said, this is Luan City, not Tokyo's Imperial City. You can't mess around. Linglan. Jing Yu pursed her lips and suddenly turned to look at Shangguan Linglan seriously. She said, don't you want to find your parents and brothers? I know what you're thinking. I said I would save them. I won't go back on my words. Jing Yu. Shangguan Linglan heard this and looked at Jing Yu with a complicated expression. When they came to save her, Jing Yu said that they had to calm down and think twice about everything. However, Shangguan Linglan did it. She tried her best to suppress her impatience and followed behind Jing Yu and Xiao Chen. She listened to their instructions and couldn't mess up the plan. After hearing about her parents yesterday, Shangguan Linglan wanted to rush out to save them countless times. However, she resisted the urge. It would be a lie if she said she didn't feel confused or uneasy. Let's go to the southeast province. Jing Yu hung the black gauze over her face and covered her eyes. She stood up and reached out her hand to Zonghua. Zonghua obediently climbed up Jing Yu's arm and wrapped around Jing Yu's waist. Let's go. Jing Yu rubbed Zonghua's head and smiled with satisfaction. We're going without discussing with the 9 emperors? Shangguan Linglan frowned and said, isn't that bad? Aren't you stupid? Jing Yu glared at Shangguan Linglan and said, if I tell Xiao Chen, he'll definitely tie me up in the inn. What's the point of discussing? Don't you want to save your parents? Let me tell you, every minute they stay in the southeast province, they'll suffer more. Chapter 857. Help. Let's go. Shangguan Linglan's expression changed. He responded in a deep voice and strode out of the inn. On the street, even if Jingyu covered her eyes, she couldn't stop the searchlights from looking at her. Who didn't know what the woman with different pupils was dressed like? It had spread all over yesterday, especially in this region. When they went to other regions, they only heard rumors. However, even if they didn't know that she had different pupils, Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were still very eye-catching. To be more precise, Jingyu was still very eye-catching. Why? If you saw an incomparably beautiful woman walking on the street with a pitch-black red burial flower wrapped around her body, how could you not go and take a look? The answer was no. At this moment, Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were walking on the street. Everyone's eyes were focused on them. The two beautiful women were walking on the street, and Jingyu had a red burial flower wrapped around her body. It was the world's #1 poisonous snake. Where is this southeast prefecture? Jingyu raised her hand and played with the red burial flower's tail. She frowned as she looked around and asked, "Let's ask someone." It was Shangguan Linglan's first time here, so how would he know where the southeast prefecture was? The two walked in a certain direction and stopped a passerby. The passerby looked quite easy to talk to and asked for the location of the southeast prefecture. Southeast prefecture? The passerby looked at Shangguan Linglan and Jingyu strangely, then turned around and pointed in the direction opposite of Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan. He said, "That's the southeast prefecture." Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan looked in the direction of this person's finger. Sure enough, they saw that not more than 100 meters away, there was a towering yuan snail mouth standing in front of them. On the signboard, there were 3 large words written in flamboyant calligraphy. Southeast Prefecture. Ugh, so it's here. Jingyu's face darkened slightly. She could see the Southeast Prefecture just by looking up, but they still stopped people at the entrance of the Southeast Prefecture to ask where it was. Seriously, Jingyu looked at the passerby silently. He looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan as if they were an idiot. She rubbed her forehead helplessly and poked Red Burial Flower's head. She said fiercely, "I brought you out for nothing. You can't even watch the road." Red Burial Flower felt wronged. Why did it have to lead the way? Jingyu coughed and leisurely walked to the front of the mansion. She immediately shuddered at the sight of the sinister wind coming from the gate. Many people must have died inside. Otherwise, where would such a heavy energy come from? "Let's go." Jingyu raised her brows and walked forward. Hey. Yeah. Are we just going to walk in like this? Shangguan Linglan quickly pulled Jingyu and asked, "How else do you want to go in?" Jingyu turned to Shangguan Linglan and asked, "Are you going to jump in?" "That's fine too." "Jump." Jingyu. Shangguan Linglan's expression darkened, and he glared at Jingyu. "Io." Jingyu looked at Shangguan Linglan helplessly and pointed at the Southeast Prefecture. "Open your eyes and look carefully. This is the Southeast Prefecture. Do you think you can sneak in if you don't go in like this? Do you believe that if you jump on the wall, countless arrows will turn you into a hornet's nest?" Chapter 858. How did you know? Shangguan Linglan's eyes widened in surprise when she heard this. The security of the Southeast Mansion didn't seem to be very tight. "I guessed." Jingyu rolled her eyes silently. In modern times, organizations like this had set up countless traps, waiting for people who wanted to sneak in to enter. It was the same as courting death. Then, what happens after we go in like this? Shangguan Linglan had no idea what Jingyu was planning. He looked at Jingyu with a conflicted expression. "After what?" Jingyu blinked and said, "After we go in, of course we'll let these people lock us up. Otherwise, how will you see your parents?" "Then, what happens after we see them?" Shangguan Linglan asked again. "Well, we'll think about it after we go in." Jingyu didn't stay any longer after saying this. She walked leisurely toward the entrance of the Southeast Mansion. Shangguan Linglan widened his eyes and watched Jingyu walk out. The corners of his mouth twitched. Shangguan Linglan was very skeptical of Jingyu's unreliability. Could she really save his parents? What if she suffered a double loss? Shangguan Linglan suddenly regretted it when they walked toward the Southeast Mansion. Should he have discussed this with the 9 emperors? However, just as Shangguan Linglan was thinking about this, Jingyu had already clashed with the guard in front. Who are you? How dare you trespass into my southeast mansion? The guard was wearing black iron armor. He glared fiercely at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan as he shouted, "Io, little handsome, don't be so fierce." Shangguan Linglan looked at this scene nervously. He thought Jingyu would shout something domineering, but he didn't expect Jingyu to shyly wave her hand and spit out such a sentence at the guard. Immediately, Shangguan Linglan was struck by lightning, charred on the outside and tinder on the inside. We just want to see what the legendary Southeast Mansion is like. Jingyu's lips curled into a seductive smile as she looked at the guard in front of her seductively. Bastard! Throw these two crazy bitches out of here. The guard remained unmoved as he coldly shouted without any trace of politeness. Hey, hey, hey. Jingyu waved her hand to stop this person. Her face darkened as she glared at the guard and shouted, "Do you know who I am? Take a good look at who I am. I don't care who you are." The guard's face was filled with fierceness as he glared at Jingyu and said, "How dare you trespass into my southeast mansion? Are you tired of living?" Scram. The guard waved his sword as he spoke, scaring Jingyu into retreating. "What's wrong with your southeast mansion? I just want to trespass. What can you do to me?" Jingyu suddenly jumped up and shouted arrogantly. The guards' faces darkened. "What are you all standing there for? Hurry up and kick him out." Chapter 859. Bastard, Scram. The guard who was addressed as the boss walked forward with a gloomy expression. He pulled out his sword and pointed it at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan coldly. "I think you're courting death. SSSS." Just as the guard was about to step forward with his sword, Zhang Hua, who was coiled around Jingyu's waist, suddenly stuck out its snake head. Zhang Hua, who was spitting out its crimson tongue, scared the guard so much that he took a few steps back. He looked at Zhang Hua in horror. "This is Red Zhang Hua." Fortunately, the gatekeeper knew what was good for him. He immediately saw the blood-red line on Zhang Hua's abdomen, and his face was filled with fear as he spoke. "Oh, you know my little Zhang Hua?" Jingyu smiled happily. She raised her hand and touched Zhang Hua's cold body. She said faintly, "Little guy, you're not bad. Your fierce name has even spread to Wan City. Who are you people?" The guard looked at Jingyu's actions, and his expression changed even more. A person could actually command a venomous snake, and it was a Zhang Hua. It was terrifying to be so intimate with a venomous snake. "Us? We're just ordinary people." Jingyu's smile deepened. She looked at the guard as if she didn't know anything and said, "Handsome guys, we really want to see what the Southeast Province looks like. Please let us in." Jingyu touched Zhang Hua's body again in a friendly manner. She suddenly felt that Zhang Hua's skin was so good. It was smooth and cold. How did she take care of it? Jingyu was addicted to touching. Zhang Hua was also very comfortable. He turned his head lazily and laid on Jingyu's shoulder. He could bite off Jingyu's neck with one bite, but Jingyu didn't seem to care at all. That's right, she didn't care. Why would Zhang Hua bite her? You must be kidding. Just as the two sides were in a stalemate, a group of people suddenly came from the other side of the street. They instantly arrived in front of Jingyu and the others. The man in the lead was covered in a black robe and wore a huge iron mask with a bull's head on his face. Jingyu looked at him curiously. He was wrapped so tightly that she stared at him curiously. "Don't you feel hot in such a tight wrap on a hot day?" Jingyu really wanted to ask this question. Prefecture Master. Just as Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were in a daze, the guards at the door, who were originally very arrogant, suddenly knelt down and shouted loudly after seeing the two of them, like mice seeing a cat. "What? Master?" Jingyu's eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at the weird-looking man in front of her. This man dressed like a metal bucket was the Southeast Prefecture's mansion lord? It can't be. The metal bucket moved towards the entrance of the Southeast Prefecture. He was dressed so tightly, but his movements were so light that Jingyu was shocked. In the blink of an eye, the metal bucket was in front of her. Is something the matter?" Jingyu leaned back slightly, and the corner of her mouth twitched slightly. She looked at the man wearing a huge iron mask and asked, "You are the Empress with different pupils?" A deep and hoarse voice entered Jing Yu's ears. That ear-piercing voice was like the sound of metal rubbing against each other. It made her hair stand on end. Chapter 860. You're the Southeast Prefecture's Prefecture Lord? Jing Yu's mouth twitched. She stared at the man in the iron mask and asked, "Bring them in." The man in the iron mask stared at Jing Yu for a long time. Then, he ordered someone to bring Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan into the Southeast Prefecture. Jing Yu was dumbfounded. She had struggled for a long time, but the guard refused to let her in. Now, she was allowed in after asking a simple question. Since she was allowed to go in, Jing Yu naturally wouldn't refuse. She let herself be taken in. The Southeast Prefecture looked very scary from the outside, but when she was inside, she couldn't help but sigh. It was even scarier on the inside. Why did it feel like there were white skeletons everywhere? Jing Yu silently sized up her surroundings. What kind of weapon racks were those? They were all racks made of bones. Sit. Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan were brought into a room. The layout of the hall could only be described as eerie. Looking at the countless skulls hanging above the head of the main seat, as well as the things inlaid on the chairs, were they human bones? Those are human bones. Jing Yu was still thinking about this question when she heard the hoarse voice of the man in the iron mask. Jing Yu's face stiffened. Jing Yu's face instantly stiffened. What the fuck? Hee hee hee. Prefecture Lord is really humorous. Jing Yu's mouth twitched into a smile. She sat down and raised her head slightly to look at the man in the iron mask. When she saw him pouring tea, Jing Yu immediately frowned. Wasn't this action of pouring water a little too stiff? Moreover, he was actually raising his pinky finger. Jing Yu silently swallowed her saliva. Looking at the majestic man in front of her, this tightly wrapped man couldn't be sick, right? Looking at his hands, he was wearing black gloves. From head to toe, apart from his eyes, nothing else was exposed. Looking at his sitting posture and actions, this man couldn't be eunuch? Jing Yu immediately thought of the eunuch from the East Factory in the TV series that she had watched before. What an awesome character. Could it be that the boss of the Southeast Prefecture was actually a eunuch, so he purposely disguised his voice into this frightening appearance? Otherwise, how could someone's voice be like this? Moreover, it looked like he was deliberately pretending to be majestic, but in fact, he was guilty. The more Jing Yu looked at the man, the more she felt that she had guessed correctly. She sympathized with him deeply, and the way she looked at the iron-masked man changed. Jing Yu's stare made the iron-masked man's hair stand on end. His hand that was holding the teacup stiffened. Then, under Jing Yu's strange stare, the iron-masked man finally put down the teacup in his hand and looked up at Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan. "I heard that. You've only been in Luan City for 2 days, but you've already turned it upside down." The iron-masked man propped up his knees, and his indifferent gaze landed on Jing Yu as he spoke. "Prefecture Lord, you're wrong to say that." Jing Yu pursed her lips slightly and said, "We're law-abiding citizens. If it weren't for those people who didn't know the difference between life and death and came forward for me to kill, we would definitely be safe and sound." Hee hee. This man's smile was even more frightening. Talking to him was simply torture. Then, "Why have you two come to my Southeast Prefecture?" The iron-masked man turned his head indifferently to look at Jing Yu and Shangguan Linglan as he asked. This wasn't the first time Jing Yu heard these words. In fact, she had heard them many times. Xiaochen also said he came from the Black Earth region. If they entered the Black Earth region, the iron-masked man paused and continued, then you don't need to look for them. They've probably been eaten by wild beasts. Impossible. Shangguan Linglan suddenly raised his head and shouted. Chapter 862. Linglan, Jingyu frowned and grabbed the agitated Shangguan Linglan. If General Shangguan and Miaoqiu really went to the Blacklands, Jingyu tightened her grip on Shangguan Linglan. She looked up at the iron-masked man and said, "Then why did the man in the tea house say that they were sent to the Southeast Prefecture?" "This. You'll have to ask the person who told you the news." After saying that, the iron-masked man slowly stood up and walked towards Jingyu, one step at a time. He then stood before Jingyu. When the man stood in front of Jingyu, Jingyu discovered something very interesting. This man was about the same height as Jingyu. Jingyu silently took a small step back and looked at the iron-masked man who was about the same height as her. He was only 1 or 2 centimeters taller than her. She frowned. From afar, he looked very majestic, but when he got closer, he was actually so short. Compared to other men, he was indeed short. However, compared to Jingyu, it was nothing. Strange pupils. The 9th Imperial Concubine. The iron-masked man narrowed his eyes and stared at Jingyu. When he leaned closer to Jingyu, the hairs on Jingyu's body stood on end. At such a close distance, Jingyu could clearly smell the fragrance on this man's body. Holy shit! How could a grown man use incense? Jingyu's face instantly twisted. She stared at the iron-masked man with a strange expression. She confirmed that her guess was wrong. This man was indeed a eunuch, a transvestite. He was definitely one. Then my old friend, is the 9th Emperor's also here? The iron-masked man's voice seemed to be filled with joy. The way he stared at Jingyu made Jingyu's hair stand on end. Hiss! Jingyu's face darkened and a cold light flashed across her eyes. Zonghua, who was lying on top of Jingyu, seemed to have sensed Jingyu's anger and bit at the iron-masked man's neck at lightning speed. What a vicious viper! The iron-masked man's expression changed. Almost at the same time as Zonghua's attack, he retreated a meter away. He looked at Zonghua with fear in his eyes. "I will kill you." Jingyu looked at the iron-masked man coldly. The thick, murderous aura around her made the iron-masked man's eyes change. "Send them away." The iron-masked man was silent for a long time before he finally spat out these words indifferently. He turned around and entered the inner room. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were also sent out of the Southeast Mansion. When they stood in front of the Southeast Mansion's gate again, Jingyu frowned deeply. She slightly raised her head and looked at the Southeast Mansion. She felt that this Southeast Mansion was not simple. "What do we do now?" Shangguan Linglan's face showed a little impatience. Hearing the news about her parents change again and again, Shangguan Linglan finally couldn't hold it in any longer. "Let's go to the Black Soil region." Jingyu took a deep breath and said, "But before that, we have to go to a place." "Where?" Shangguan Linglan looked at Jingyu and asked. "The tea house." Jingyu gritted her teeth and shouted angrily, "How dare you cheat me of my money? You must be tired of living." Jingyu said angrily. Shangguan Linglan's mouth twitched. Chapter 863. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan walked angrily to the tea house they stopped at last time. The tea house was bustling with people. Jingyu and Shanghai Linglan walked around but couldn't find that person. They asked the waiter, but he couldn't tell them anything either. "So, this brat cheated me of my money and ran away?" Jingyu said through gritted teeth. "Isn't that obvious?" Shangguan Linglan said quietly, "If he didn't run after cheating you of your money, would he just sit here and wait for you to catch him?" "Damn it." Jingyu was so angry that her face turned black. She cursed Xiao Chun in her heart again. This idiot actually took out all the gold leaves. Didn't he know how to feel the pinch? Was money that easy to earn? Since we didn't find him, what should we do now? Jingyu asked Jingyu, "What else can we do?" "Let's go to the Black Soil District." Jingyu sighed silently, turned around, and walked out of the tea house. However, just as Jingyu turned around and walked to the entrance of the tea house, a limping figure was about to enter. Jingyu habitually looked up. If she didn't look, she wouldn't have known. But when she did, she was shocked. Wasn't this the person Jingyu was looking for? Looking at this pretty boy's delicate appearance, Jingyu was surprised that this guy was actually a cripple. This guy probably didn't expect to bump into Jingyu the moment he entered the tea house. He immediately bumped into Jingyu. His eyes widened, and he stared at Jingyu for a long time. Then, he suddenly turned around and limped away. Flower burial. Jingyu looked at the guy who was about to run away, and her face turned cold. She raised her head and shouted. The flower burial that was wrapped around Jingyu's body shot out quickly and wrapped around the guy's neck in the blink of an eye. Anyone would be frightened and fall to the ground in an instant when a snake suddenly coiled around their neck. The man also fell to the ground because his legs weren't supporting him well. He stared at the flower burial snake that coiled around him and screamed in horror. Stop screaming. It didn't bite down. Jingyu scolded with a frown. The guy closed his eyes and screamed crazily. When he heard Jingyu's words, he opened his eyes in horror. He was so scared that he didn't dare to move an inch when he saw the flower burial snake staring at him covetously. Ma'am. The handsome man's face was pale with fright as he called out to Jingyu stiffly. Humph. Do you know who I am? Jingyu stood beside the guy with interest. She walked around him and said calmly, Tell me, why are you running away? I. The guy swallowed his saliva in fear. He looked at the flower burial snake that was hissing and sticking out its forked tongue and was about to cry. You've got guts. Jingyu squatted in front of the guy and said calmly, You even dare to cheat me of my money? My lady. I won't dare to do it again. I won't dare to do it again. Don't kill me. The guy was scared to death when he heard that. His body trembled, and he looked like he wanted to cry but didn't dare to. Jingyu frowned when she saw his stiff body. Where's my money? Jingyu asked the guy. The corner of Shangguan Linglan's mouth twitched fiercely. So you stopped him just to ask if he still has his money? No. It's gone. The guy looked at Jingyu's snow-white hand and swallowed his saliva silently. This is a jade pendant that one of them pawned. The man took out a jade pendant from his sleeve and handed it to Jingyu. I thought it was worth some money, but when I went to the pawn shop to exchange it for money, I was told that it wasn't a jade pendant, but an ordinary piece of jade. Chapter 865. That's Daddy's jade. Shangguan Linglan recognized the item in the man's hand almost immediately. His eyes widened in surprise as he exclaimed, I have a jade pendant like that too. Daddy used to say that those jade pendants weren't pretty and only this jade stone was good. Although it's called jade stone, it's just a piece of glass. It's not jade at all. He made one for everyone in the Shangguan family. It's Daddy's. Shangguan Linglan said excitedly, Hurry up and tell me, where are they? Jingyu's eyes lit up when she heard Shangguan Linglan's words. She stared at the man sitting on the ground and asked, I saw that they didn't have any money, so? The man swallowed his saliva and said, I just casually gave them a path. This path is the path to the Blacklands. After that, I don't know if they went there or not. After the man finished speaking, he looked at Jingyu in fear and shivered. What did you say? You gave them a path to the Blacklands? Jingyu's eyes widened in shock as she asked the man in front of her in a daze. I didn't think too much about it. The man looked at Jingyu as if he was about to cry and said, If I knew that they were related to Big Sister, I wouldn't have given them the path to the Blacklands. You're simply, you. Jingyu was about to explode from anger as she glared at the man in front of her. Maybe they didn't go to the Blacklands? The man swallowed his saliva and looked at Jingyu as he spoke. Why don't you go and die? Jingyu raised her leg and kicked him fiercely. Her face was green with anger. Yeah, let's go to the Blacklands to find Daddy. Shangguan Linglan clenched his fists and looked at Jingyu anxiously as he spoke. Go. You can't go. Just as Shangguan Linglan finished speaking, the man sitting on the ground quickly said, Two Big Sisters are outsiders. You don't know how terrifying the Black Soil region is. Once you enter that place, you won't be able to get out easily. Is the Black Earth region really that scary? Jingyu frowned as she stared at the man and asked, "You've been there before?" "Aye." The man's face turned red when he heard Jingyu's question. He straightened his neck and said, "I heard it from others. That place is really scary." Come, come. Get up. Let's talk as we walk." Jingyu stretched out her hand towards the flower burial snake, and it obediently coiled around her arm. The man watched in horror as Jingyu played with the snake. Talk about what? The man let out a sigh of relief when the flower burial snake finally left. He stood up and looked weakly at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan as he asked, "Tell me about the Black Lands." Jingyu said as she looked around and said, "Let's look for a shop and see if there's anything we need to buy. We'll enter the Black Lands." Huh? The man's eyes widened as he looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan with a conflicted expression and said, "You guys really want to go in?" "Wrong." Jingyu turned to the man and said with a smile, "It's not you guys, it's us." "What?" The man was stunned as he looked at Jingyu in confusion. Chapter 866. You, come in with us. Jingyu pointed at the man and said calmly, "What?" The man jumped up in fright and waved his hands. "No, I'm not going in." "Do you think you have the chance to refuse?" As soon as Jingyu finished speaking, Zonghua, who was lying on Jingyu's shoulder, raised his head and opened his mouth slightly. His sharp fangs were revealed, causing the man's face to instantly turn pale. "I." The man looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan with an expression of wanting to cry, but no tears came out. "Lead the way obediently. If you dare to lie to us again, I'll chop you up and feed you to my flower burial snake." Jingyu narrowed her eyes dangerously and said. When Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan finished shopping, it was already late. In order to prevent the man from running away, Jingyu tied up his hands without hesitation. The flower burial snake hung on the man's body leisurely. "Woo-woo. Two big sisters. Can we talk about something?" After an afternoon of communication, Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan found out the man's name. He was called Xiang Xing and was famous for swindling people in Wan City. What a waste of such a good name. Jingyu complained silently when she heard the name of this guy. There's no room for discussion. When Jingyu heard Xiang Xing's words, she replied without even turning her head. Xiang Xing felt even more wronged. He tilted his head slightly and looked at the flower burial snake that was playing happily on his body. He was so scared that he almost peed his pants. "Hey, why haven't we reached the Black Soil region yet?" Jingyu had been walking for a long time, but she still hadn't reached the place she wanted to go. She suddenly frowned. Xiang Xing's eyes widened when he heard Jingyu's question. "Big sister, it's getting dark. The Black Soil region is the scariest at night. If we want to go in to find someone, we have to wait until tomorrow morning." "No." Jingyu frowned and said, "We can't delay any longer. We have to go in tonight." "Big sister, you want me to pay with my life?" Xiang Xing wanted to cry. "Cut the crap. Lead the way." Jingyu frowned and looked at this person with a displeased expression. His little life was in the hands of others, so how could Xiang Xing refuse? Along the way, he dragged his feet and led the way. His face was twisted, as if he was about to be taken to be raped. This made Shangguan Linglan's eyebrows twitch. After walking for a short while, they realized that the people around them had changed. The place that used to be crowded was now empty. There were medical shops and pharmacies all around them. On the streets, there were many people sitting on the stone steps, all of them looking injured. On this street, only Jingyu, Shangguan Linglan, and a few others were walking around. Everyone cast their gazes over. "Big sisters, do you really want to go in now?" Xiang Xing paused and retracted the expression on his face. He looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan with a solemn expression and asked, "We have to go in." Jingyu nodded resolutely. Shangguan Linglan didn't say anything, but his unwavering gaze told Xiang Xing what he meant. Xiang Xing looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan, and his face twisted. This young master has sworn an oath to never step into the Black Soil again. Today, I'm going to break that oath on you. Xiang Xing frowned as he spoke. He turned around and looked in a certain direction. That's the entrance to the black soil zone, he said faintly. Chapter 867. Wait, didn't you say you've never been to the black soil zone? Jingyu glared at Xiang Xing. Well, Xiang Xing silently took a few steps back. I'll beat you to death, you little liar. Jingyu stomped her foot. Xiang Xing hid behind Shangguan Linglan and yelled, I can't change it. I'm used to it, ah. Stop hitting me. Big sister. I know I was wrong. Jingyu glared at Xiang Xing angrily. He looked like he was 17 or 18 years old, but he didn't learn well. Hee. Aren't we going to the black soil zone? Let's go. Xiang Xing said to Jingyu with a grin. Oh, weren't you not going just now? Why are you going now? Jingyu looked at Xiang Xing with a gloomy expression. Aren't we already here? Besides, how could this young master have the heart to let these two beautiful sisters take the risk? Xiang Xing said with a grin as he looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan with a flattering expression. Smooth talker. Jingyu glared at Xiang Xing and said, No wonder a weak child like you can do so well in Wan City. You can eat all the food in the world with that mouth of yours. Thank you, big sister, for your praise. Xiang Xing smiled happily. Jingyu rubbed her forehead speechlessly. Was she really praising him? These people, are they all from the black soil zone? After causing a ruckus for a long time, Shangguan Linglan walked while her gaze fell on the people on both sides. She frowned slightly and asked Xiang Xing, yes? Xiang Xing followed Shangguan Linglan's gaze and frowned. They're a group of people without a sect in Wan City. They usually enter the black soil zone during the day to hunt wild beasts for a living. Jingyu frowned as she looked at their wounds. Most of them were bitten by wild beasts. What exactly is in the black soil region that makes you so afraid? You don't know? Xiang Xing stopped in his tracks and looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan in horror. Should I know? Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan looked at each other in confusion. They turned to Xiang Xing with an expression that said, We don't know anything. Xiang Xing didn't know what to say. You don't even know this. How dare you barge into the black soil region? Xiang Xing gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. Under the strange gazes of Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan, Xiang Xing finally sighed in relief. The reason why the black soil zone is so terrifying is because there is a kind of beast in the black soil zone. It is a beast that no one has ever seen before. We call it the black Qilin. As Xiang Xing spoke, he licked his lips. There was a look of desire in his eyes. This black Kirin looks exactly like the Kirins in the books. However, this black Kirin's body is very small. It only laughs like a rabbit. Its entire body is as black as ink. Even its fur and tongue are black. That's why it's called the black Kirin. Xiang Xing pursed his lips as he spoke. You've seen it before? Jingyu's eyes lit up when she heard this description. What was that? No. Xiang Xing shook his head. Xiang Xing shook his head honestly and said, 10 years ago, there was a team of 100 people who went into the black soil area. They risked their lives and brought back the body of a black Kirin. At that time, only one person of the team survived. Chapter 868. Tessas. No way. How can a black Qilin the size of a rabbit be so powerful? Jingyu frowned as she looked at Xiang Xing. Shangguan Linglan also had a strange look in her eyes. Sisters, you don't know this, but once this black Qilin appears, there will be thousands of them. Just a spit from one beast can drown you. If there was only one, why would everyone be in such a sorry state? Xiang Xing sighed deeply. SSS, so many? Jingyu's eyes widened, filled with fear. Furthermore, after more and more people died, we came to the conclusion that the black Qilin's mouth is most active at night. Now that I've said this, do the two sisters still want to go in now? Xiang Xing looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan with an expression that said, now you know fear. Of course we do. Jingyu didn't expect Xiang Xing to show such an expression. She clapped her hands and said without hesitation, "This is such a fun thing. We have to go in and take a look. My dear sister, if you want to die, don't drag me down with you. I have parents and children. I'm still young. I haven't lived long enough." Xiang Xing wanted to cry and almost knelt down in front of Jingyu. He looked at Jingyu with a tearless expression. "Look at you." Jingyu looked at Xiang Xing with disdain and said, "Don't you want to see this black Qilin?" I want to," Xiang Xing said in an aggrieved manner. "But even if I want to, I can't joke with my life." "Don't worry, if we can't win, we'll run." Jingyu patted Xiang Xing's shoulder magnanimously and said, "Let's go. It's getting dark." Xiang Xing couldn't refuse at all. He hung his head like a dead dog and followed Jingyu into the black soil area. The closer they went, the clearer Jingyu could feel the sense of death coming from the depths of the forest. As Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan walked in, they saw the grand scene in front of them. The tall walls surrounded the forest inside. When Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan arrived, they saw a group of people walking out. "Why haven't you left?" When the group of people saw Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan walking towards the black soil area, their eyes widened. They stopped and looked at Jingyu and then at Jingyu, who was tied up, and asked. They said, "You three ladies want to enter the black soil area?" "Ladies, you can't enter the black soil area at night. You'd better go back. You can enter tomorrow morning," one of the men said softly. "Big brothers, did you come from the black soil area?" Jingyu smiled and said, "I heard that the black Qilin in the black soil area is not ordinary. We're here to see it for ourselves." Young people are so frivolous. When Jingyu said that, the man's expression changed. He shook his head slightly and turned to leave. Jingyu could even hear the people in the distance muttering that they would have something to talk about tomorrow. Jingyu turned her head to the side and watched the burly men leave. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She looked at the incomparably eerie forest in front of her, and a strange look appeared in her eyes. "Let's go." Jingyu took the lead and walked into the black soil area. The ground under her feet seemed to have become very stiff at this moment. Chapter 869. Jingyu lowered her head slightly and looked at the black soil under her feet. It was clearly the same color, but for some reason, Jingyu felt that the black soil in the black soil area was somewhat different. "Why do I feel that the soil here is so hard?" Shangguan Linglan also noticed that something was wrong. She frowned slightly as she looked up at Xiang Xing and asked, "In the black soil area, all the soil is the same." Xiang Xing shrugged and stood in place to determine the direction. He said, "The black soil area is so big. Finding someone is easier said than done." "No rush, let's take it one step at a time." Jingyu responded and walked into the black soil area. This was a forest, but the trees that grew in this area seemed to be very different. Looking at the bark, they were all black. Most of the leaves on these trees had fallen off. Only a few patches of the forest still had leaves. Looking at the forest, it looked like a man who didn't shave his head properly, leaving one patch of hair on the left and another patch of hair on the right. When the sky turned completely dark, the black soil area fell into an eerie silence. It was so quiet that it seemed like only their voices could be heard. Xiang Xing panted slightly. He leaned against a tree and looked at Jingyu. He panted and said, "Big sisters, can you help me untie this rope?" "No. What if you run away after I undo it?" Jingyu's eyes widened slightly when she heard that. She turned to look at Xiang Xing and said, "Big sister, although I'm a liar, I'm not stupid, okay? If I run away alone in the black soil area at night, wouldn't I be looking for death? If the three of us stay together, there's a chance of survival." "You're quite good at calculating." Jingyu glared at Xiang Xing from the corner of her eyes and came forward to untie his hands. Jingyu wasn't afraid that he would run away. It was better if he ran away. As long as they entered the forest, it didn't matter whether Xiang Xing stayed or left. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan focused all of their attention on searching. They didn't see a single trace of a person. Not to mention humans, he didn't even see any beasts. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan originally wanted to light a torch, but they were stopped by Xiang Xing. He said that the light would expose their position and attract the black Qilin. Therefore, Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan were relying on the moonlight to move forward in the dark. What is that? As Jingyu was walking, she suddenly felt that she had stepped on something soft. Her heart skipped a beat, and she looked down. A corpse. Xiang Xing squatted down and touched the corpse. He felt something warm in his hand. Xiang Xing frowned and looked around cautiously. He said, "He died not long ago. It seems he didn't leave the forest in time and was attacked." "Did the black Qilin do this?" Jingyu asked with widened eyes. "No." Xiang Xing frowned slightly and replied, "It was the lone traveler who did it. Everything on him was taken away." "What's a lone traveler?" Jingyu turned to look at Xiang Xing and asked, "Why are things popping out one after another? This Luan city is really interesting." Lone traveler, also known as the Qilin killer. They travel alone in the forest. They like the thrill of being on the edge of life and death. They challenge the black Qilin alone. Some can escape unscathed, while others lose their lives. Chapter 870. As Xiang Xing spoke, he turned his head slightly and looked around before continuing. These lone wolves never leave the forest, regardless of whether it's night or day. They live in the forest for a long time and rely on killing and plundering to survive. Jingyu's eyes lit up when she heard Xiang Xing's words. Hearing this description, Jingyu suddenly thought of what she said to Xiao Chun when she separated from Xiao Qian. If they could gather these people together, they would definitely form a huge force. Why do these people stay in the black soil area and not go out? Jingyu frowned and asked in confusion. Because they offended the southeast prefecture. Xiang Xing paused and looked at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan. In Luan City, it's fine even if you offend the three sections. However, if you offend the people of the southeast prefecture, then other than death, you can only enter the black soil area. Southeast prefecture. Jingyu pursed her lips and looked at Xiang Xing. It seems that you have a deep grudge with the southeast prefecture. Xiang Xing turned his head and didn't say anything. He continued to walk forward silently. Jingyu looked at Xiang Xing's footsteps and was speechless. Just as she was about to look away, she suddenly turned her head and said in surprise, "You're not lame anymore." "When have I ever been lame?" Xiang Xing turned his head and looked at Jingyu with a smile. "You little liar." Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan had walked for a while when they suddenly heard a faint sound. The three of them, who were originally quite relaxed, suddenly felt their hair stand on end. They were on full alert and looked at each other. They lowered their bodies and quietly moved towards the source of the sound. The closer they got, the louder the sound became. They could vaguely hear voices that seemed to be very excited and anxious. Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan found a bush and squatted down. They pushed aside the grass in front of them and clearly saw the movement in front of them. There were about 3 or 4 people fighting and killing. Jingyu looked carefully and found that there were actually women among them. 4 men and 1 woman. The 5 of them were currently fighting over a dozen black things the size of little rabbits. Although these things were small in size, they were very agile. They could jump up and down, and no one could catch them. Jingyu stared at this scene with wide eyes. If she wasn't wrong, that little thing must be the legendary black Qilin. Its size was really small. "It's a hunting team," Xiang Xing judged and said, "It's another team that hasn't gone out. We can't stay here for long. Let's go." "Why?" Jingyu looked at Xiang Xing in confusion. "Don't you see? Those are ink Qilins. There are only a dozen of them now. Soon, there will be over 100, and then there will be over 1,000. When that time comes, they will eat you alive." "Do you think you still want to stay here?" Xiang Xing said as he looked at the ink Qilins. "No way. That terrifying?" Jingyu's eyes widened as she looked around and said, "Then why aren't these people running?" "They are stupid." Xiang Xing shrugged and said, "Let's go." "No." Jingyu shook her head and said, "Let's save these people and ask them if they know anything." Chapter 871. Are you crazy? Xiang Xing's eyes widened as he looked at Jingyu. These enchanting are holding you down. You can't escape at all. Do you think these people can still survive? If you get involved now, even if you run all over the black soil region, they will still chase after you. Jingyu's eyes widened when she heard that. Were these really wild beasts? Weren't they homing missiles or something? Let's go. Xiang Xing didn't give Jingyu any time to think. Without another word, he pulled Jingyu and ran in the opposite direction. Shangguan Linglan followed closely behind. Jingyu and the others had just left when they vaguely heard a strange sound behind them. Then, the woman's shrill scream pierced through the air. It added a terrifying atmosphere to this gloomy black soil area. Jingyu sucked in a breath of cold air. Hearing that sound, she suddenly felt incomparably lucky. Luckily, Xiang Xing was leading them. Otherwise, if she had rushed forward like a fool, she wouldn't even know how she died. But what the hell was this place? Why was it filled with all sorts of strange things? Ever since they entered Luan City, everything they did felt strange. People were also strange. Everything that happened made them extremely speechless. Now that they had entered the legendary black soil region, Jingyu began to wonder if she had transmigrated again. What the fuck is this? It's best if you don't think about the terror of the ink cheelants. Xiang Xing grinned slightly and said, because if you really encounter them, you will know what it means to live and die in an instant. You said that? Did you encounter them before? Jingyu's gaze landed on Xiang Xing curiously. This boy who looked like he was only 17 or 18 years old seemed to have experienced countless things. Also, he seemed to be very familiar with the black soil region. Jingyu could clearly feel that he was very familiar with the roads in the black soil region. He wasn't curious at all along the way. He could even easily avoid the gullies and rocks. If he didn't walk here often, Jingyu wouldn't believe it. Also, when he was inspecting the corpse just now, he was so skilled that he could tell at a glance whether the person's belongings were still there. All in all, this boy was definitely not simple. Remember, if you encounter the ink cheelants, don't take the initiative to attack them. Xiang Xing didn't reply to Jingyu. Instead, he calmly said that sentence and continued to walk forward. Jingyu looked at Xiang Xing's back. If this person really wanted to attack Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan in the black soil region, it would be too easy. If that was really the case, it seemed that they had to kill him if necessary. As Jingyu thought about it, her eyes darkened slightly. Just as she was about to continue walking, an extremely loud cry for help suddenly came from behind her. The cry for help and the direction of the voice caused Jingyu and the others' expressions to change slightly. It's those people from just now, Jingyu said with a frown. Damn it, they're actually running towards us. Xiang Xing's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. Without another word, he turned to the side and shouted at Jingyu and Shangguan Linglan. What are you waiting for? Run. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.